Welcome to the Black Ship Universe channel. Now playing the Black Ship side story, Barony of the Screaming Forest, Day 7, Part 4 by David Orth.
At about 4:30, Cynthia looked up again. This time, pointing towards the harbor, she asked, "Who is that?" Wyatt looked up to see a huge man. He said, "Oh, that's Marcus, my organizer, but I have no idea what he is up to." Marcus was walking towards the damaged swimming pool, which sat next to the harbor wall and in front of and to the left of the fish and chips restaurant. As they watched, he pulled his shirt over his head, then, after looking in the pool for a few seconds, jumped in feet first. Curious to see what the large man was doing, everyone pulled on shirts or wraps and sauntered down the beach towards the pool. After a few seconds of sinking up to her ankles in the dry sand, Cynthia moved closer to the sea, where the wave-washed beach was slightly firmer underfoot. She looked over to see Wyatt looking at her and shrugged, saying simply, "It's easier to walk on." Approaching the pool, they could see through the clear, calm waters that Marcus was on the bottom, pushing large chunks of stone towards the edge. When Marcus came to the surface, he was stunned to discover he had an audience, and even more surprised when he realized just who the audience consisted of. Looking down into the water, Wyatt asked, "Marcus, what in Julius's name are you trying to do?" Marcus looked up and decided the safest thing to do was just reply to Wyatt. "Oh, hello, Wyatt," he started. "I'm trying to repair the swimming pool." Wyatt scratched his head. Today was turning out to be an extraordinary day. Still, he had to ask, "You are telling me you plan to fix the pool on your own? I know you are a big man, but are you sure you can do that?" Marcus came over to the side of the pool, looking up to Wyatt. He laughingly replied, No, but tonight should be a very low tide." There were tide tables in one of the fishing boats, and the builders found some bags of quick-setting waterproof cement in the builder's yard. "I've persuaded some of the builders to come here and reset the damaged stonework tonight at low tide. But to do that, I need to clear the areas that need repair and make sure the pool can drain. I put oil on the drain valves, and I'm hoping I can open them. If so, then I can fully drain the pool tonight, the builders can reset the missing stones, and then we can refill the pool tomorrow at high tide." Clara walked over to the edge of the pool and, looking down, said, "So, Marcus, how can we help?" Marcus started to stammer, "Your Royal Highness, I didn't mean to." Clara held up her hand and simply said, "Clara." Wyatt elaborated, "The princess, in her infinite wisdom, has said that just for today, while on the sand at the beach here in Newtown, we are all to call each other by our first names." Wyatt looked at the pool surroundings before continuing, "I believe there is enough sand surrounding the pool and within the pool itself to qualify." Behind him, Clara nodded in agreement. Marcus looked up at the blonde princess, and her blue-haired bodyguard, taking in the beach attire that they and the others were all wearing, shrugged and said, "Well, you're high. Clara, there's a big crack in the outer wall, plus some missing stones. I think that's why the pool fills quickly with each high tide, but then drains down to about half full as the tide goes out. I need to get the stones from the bottom of the pool and put them near the crack for the builders to cement back in place. Plus, I need to get the drain valves opened so that the pool will drain with the low tide." Clara nodded, then looked around and said, "Well, you heard Marcus. Let's get this done. We have about an hour before dinner. We might as well build up an appetite." Pretty soon only Rachel, Clara, and Wyatt were on the side of the pool. Everyone else was helping gather the stones from under the water. Wyatt was leaning over the side, helping take the stones out of the water and stack them neatly beside the crack in the wall. With all the noise going on, he never noticed Clara and Rachel quietly approaching him from behind. The next thing he knew, he was dropping straight into the water with an almighty splash, and he found himself underwater, which made him panic immediately. Fortunately, Marcus grabbed him by the shoulders and pulled him upright, yelling, "Stand up!" It was only then that Wyatt discovered that if he stood up, his shoulders were out of the water, and he was in no danger of drowning. Clara and Rachel stood on the side of the pool laughing, and pretty soon everyone, including Wyatt, joined in. With everyone working on the pool, it took very little time to remove all of the largest stones and many of the smaller ones, placing them adjacent to the areas that needed repair. Then, working together, Marcus and Cynthia managed to get the drain valves to fully open, working them up and down a few times until they worked effectively, if a little stiffly. Afterwards, everyone showered off and changed back into normal clothing, then went to sit outside the restaurant in the late afternoon sun. Clara asked Declan about the men and women he had been evaluating as possible NCOs. Declan replied, "There are 7. 2 are just about acceptable, and I was going to suggest to the sergeant major that they could serve as lance corporals until they are ready to be promoted. 4 more can be promoted to corporals with no doubt in my mind that they will perform more than adequately. And then there's Acting Corporal Lily Bauer. She is more than competent. I believe that she can manage the role of sergeant. Plus, according to the records, we already have a few NCOs amongst the Drazen prisoners left on the ship. We should have enough with these 7 to just about manage." Clara looked at Declan, asking, "Are you sure?" This time, Declan, surprising himself, laughed out loud. "Yes, I am sure, Clara. If Lily Bauer had been born of noble blood, she would have no problem serving as a Marine sergeant, quite possibly even a commissioned officer. She is unusually fit and really quite clever. I expect if she remains in Auxilia, she will achieve the rank of company, perhaps even regimental sergeant major at an early age." Clara considered this for a minute, then quietly said, "I have a box of stripes with me. I believe that we have time before dinner to present these young men and women with their new rank, don't you?" Declan thought for a moment, then said, "I could send one of my men to collect those worthy of promotion, and then we could hold a small ceremony here before dinner. We have enough time for them to change into their cleanest uniforms for a presentation." Clara replied, "Send your man Declan. Oh, and Declan, let's have Sergeant Bauer join us for dinner. She's been on duty all day. I would like to know what makes her so special." Declan was careful not to show his surprise this time, replying with, "Of course, Clara. Should I let her know now?" It came as no surprise when Clara, after appearing to consider this for a minute, replied, "I think the invitation can wait until after she receives her stripes, don't you?" A sigh escaped Cynthia's lips as she listened to her friend's commands, and a slight shake of the head indicated Wyatt's reluctant acceptance of yet another of Clara's surprises. Still, they sat in the sun on the terrace, enjoying ice-cold apple cordial, casually chatting to each other while Rachel caught up on her messages. At about 5:30, James Sicklehorn came to the terrace and quietly said, "Excuse me, Your Royal Highness, but have you decided on how many will be at the dinner so that my staff and I can make final preparations?" Clara replied, "Thank you, Master Sicklehorn. There will be 17 of us for dinner. I suggest 8 per side of this rather large table and 1 at the head, if you could arrange that." James replied with, "Immediately, Your Royal Highness." As James and his staff began making arrangements, Declan reported that the Auxilia to be promoted, along with Sergeant Major Starrant, had arrived, as had Aino and the Yakanti, Arincho, and Tevish. With Clara preparing herself to look suitably regal, Wyatt went to inspect the Auxilia, instructing Lily Bauer to join them. Glad that he had changed back into his pilot's uniform, he stepped out of the building. As Wyatt stepped out of the restaurant, Sergeant Major Starrant barked out, "Attention!" And 7 well-turned-out privates snapped to attention, their boots stamping down in unison. Wyatt quickly made his inspection, satisfied that everyone had clean uniforms and that each soldier was as smartly turned out as anyone could ask of them. Wyatt called out, "Stand at ease," and the soldiers moved slightly to the more relaxed position. Wyatt continued, "In a few minutes you will receive your promotions from the second Asturian princess. Clara asked her herself. Each of you has been judged worthy of these promotions, some of which are extraordinary promotions given to cover our unusual circumstances. While I am sure that every one of you deserves the promotion, you will have to work twice as hard to prove it. I expect that none of you will let either Her Highness down or me down. Indeed, I will be checking on your progress regularly. Do not disappoint me." A chorus of "Sir, no, sir," came from the 7 waiting for promotion. From behind, Wyatt came the sound of the restaurant door swinging open, and Sergeant Major Starrant called, "Attention!" once again. Clara emerged somehow looking regal, despite her simple clothes. Leopold stood behind, his datapad in his hand recording the presentation. Clara took the simple cloth chevrons and presented them to each soldier. With each presentation, she offered a few words of congratulation, asked how the person felt or made a unique comment that made each soldier feel special, Their responses showed that each of them treated this promotion as a great honor. With all of them executing a perfect salute in turn, Wyatt felt certain that the older sergeant major had probably given them advice on just how to behave, and none of them disappointed. 2 lance corporals were first, then 4 corporals. Lily Bauer was the last in line and was ready to receive her corporal's stripes when Clara stopped and took sergeant's chevrons out, saying, "Private Bauer, according to your superiors, you exhibit an unusual level of skill and competence. Due to the circumstances, we have decided to carry out an accelerated promotion and ignore the normal requirements of service time." "Congratulations, Sergeant Bauer." Afterwards, Sergeant Major Starrant dismissed the party and sent them to get their dinners, all except Lily Bauer. Expecting to resume her sentry detail at the restaurant entrance, Lily was surprised when a Royal Marine took her place and invited her to sit at the table on the terrace with everyone else. With the table laid and a fire started in the fire pit, the remaining guests gathered to watch the sun setting across the bay. As it began to set, Clara said, "This has been a delightful day, and until I leave I extend the same courtesy to those that have just joined us for dinner, since I see that despite their hard work, there are still traces of sand left on the terrace." Then she nodded at Cynthia. Cynthia cleared her throat and announced, "By royal command, just for today, and just whilst we have sand beneath our feet, we are commanded to address each other by our names, not by whatever rank or title we possess." Looking at the newest sergeant in the barony, Cynthia added, "Yes, Lily, that means just for tonight until we enter the building and then leave you may address Her Royal Highness as Clara. And we will all call you Lily." Newly promoted Sergeant Bauer was clearly shocked and, for a moment, paused before turning to the princess and saying, "Thank you, Clara." Clara, now grinning, turned back to watch the sunset turn the sky a beautiful collection of orange and purple hues, while behind them, Declan's servants finished setting the table, as the sun finally dipped below the horizon. When the party turned away from the view, they discovered that the great table was now prepared for a feast, with cutlery and glasses placed at 17 settings, and lanterns and additional flowers placed on the table, the floral displays combined with tiny glowing lights. James Sicklehorn stood at the entrance to the kitchen and announced, his voice tinged with pride, "Your Royal Highness, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, dinner is about to be served. Please take your seats." Everyone moved around trying to decide who they would like to sit next to, with Clara at the head of the table, Wyatt standing to her left and Cynthia to her right. But just as they were about to sit, Clara said, "Wyatt, since I am taking the day off, but this is still your barony, I believe it only right that you should sit at the head of the table." And so as they all sat down, Wyatt found himself looking down the table. On his right there was Clara, Jincho, Raquel, Leopold, Elizabeth, Nultar, Arancho, and finally Gregor. At the same time, on his left, there were Cynthia, Marcus, Tevish, Michael, Rachel, Declan, Lily, and lastly, Ino. Once they were seated, James said, "With thanks to Her Royal Highness, we can offer you both alcoholic and non-alcoholic wine, apple cordial, or water to drink." As 4 of Declan's servants proceeded to pour the drinks, the 5th carefully rolled out a trolley on which a selection of starters sat. James said, "There is more than enough food, so for your starters I can offer cheese potato and onion soup, a Hago prawn cocktail, and a smoked caprese bruschetta." Once everyone had made their selections, James went back to the kitchens. The aromas that came from the different dishes were mouth-wateringly delicious, causing Clara to remark, "I believe, my dear Wyatt, that if this is the standard of cooking to be found in Newtown, I may have to carry out impromptu visits more often." Everyone laughed as Wyatt replied, "Please, Clara, I am sure that Declan's words encouraged everyone to make a special effort, but while I would never suggest your visits might be unwelcome, perhaps for your next trip we might have a little more time to produce our own homegrown foods." With a wink to Wyatt, Clara just said, "Perhaps." As everyone enjoyed their starters, they found themselves talking to their neighbors, and barriers were gradually broken down, so that by the time the buffet was brought out, the conversations were flowing much more easily. James came out again to inform everyone of the choices available to them. There was Oriental orange chicken, sausage a la Norma, lamb and spinach curry, Brazilian beef and battered fish, served up alongside large dishes of rice, potatoes, both fried, and a spicy salad version, along with several vegetable dishes. Once everyone had made their choices and resumed their seats, Clara once again started the conversation, but this time with a slightly more serious tone, asking, "So, Wyatt, have you decided what to do with your barony yet?" Wyatt leant back in his chair, enjoying a piece of battered fish, then said, "I think so. I had many ideas when I was informed that I was to be put in charge of this barony. Before I became a pilot, I worked for a while in a sawmill. Obviously, there is plenty of high-quality timber on Hygo, so that was my initial thought. Still, everyone on Hygo will produce timber. It was pointed out to me that we have not only a harbor, but several farms here, and that everyone always needs food. And whilst it does not pay a lot, it would mean that Newtown will never be short of food. Or for that matter, having inspected the White Hart Brewery earlier today, short of beer. However, I believe in the long term, our new Yikanti residents might offer us access to a rather different market. I believe we should look at the arts and crafts market, with particular emphasis on producing individual items for noble houses. I've been informed that many nobles will pay well for high-quality, unique pieces. According to the records, we have a good number of craftsmen specializing in wooden items along with numerous metalworkers. Our new Yikanti friends bring skills in multiple arts and crafts. We should take advantage of them. Let the rest of Hygo produce raw materials. We will produce rare, handmade, finished items." Looking down the table to Arinko, Wyatt asked, "What do you say, Arinko? Are you willing to produce expensive art for the nobles of the principality?" Arinko, his beak half full of battered fish, had to hurriedly swallow his food to reply, "I believe we shall be able to do this. We can add decoration to many items by painting or carving or engraving. We can work with human carpenters, stonemasons, builders. Whatever you need, we will help. This is our pledge to you. You have given us a home. We will help make it an even better place." Wyatt nodded, then said, "To that end, Rachel here," gesturing at the young woman 3 places away from him on his right, came up with the idea of souvenirs, small items that will be quick to make, that can make us a small additional amount of funds to help run the barony for a little while. While I was looking for something else, I discovered we had an ample supply of small ceramic fragments from the destroyed Drazan ships. What I would like to do is mount a small piece of this ceramic waste on a maybe 1 centimeter thick slice of tree that was damaged by fire when we burned the Drazan. Around the piece of ceramic, we can give the date of the battle that led to the victory in the Hastrung system over the Drazan. On the underside of the wooden base, we can etch a logo for the barony and a limited edition issue, such as 57 of 1 million. There is at least one carpentry shop with a laser engraver. There might be others. So I believe we need our woodsmen to find fire-damaged trees and harvest branches of 7 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Then every spare carpenter should be slicing up those branches into neat slices and sanding them to a smooth finish on both sides before they get etched front and back. Then we just need to glue on a bit of debris and it's ready for shipping. Hopefully, with all the supplies that will be arriving in Hygo, we can find packaging material and box them up at maybe 500 or 1,000 to a crate. We will sell them in bulk to ship captains for 10 credits each, and they can sell them at 20 credits each. I'd like us to produce 1 million in the next 30 to 40 days. Everybody started talking at once at this point, though Wyatt was glad to see that they didn't stop eating their meal. He hoped that meant they thought it might be possible. Jincho looked up at Clara, asking, "Pretty eyes, why did Maniac not talk about this sooner?" Clara, in turn, looked at Wyatt and said, "I have no idea, but probably because he only just thought about it. Can it even be done?" Jincho said nothing, his mind lost in thoughts and calculations. Finally, he raised his voice and said, "It is difficult, not impossible. There is enough time." Everybody around the table looked at the little Yikanti in silence, waiting to see what he would say next. Finally, Jincho said, "For 1 million small plaques, you need to cut about 25 kilometers of branches. This is not difficult. You will be cutting burned trees, no little twigs or leaves to remove. They will all be gone. So one man can cut down maybe 30 saplings or more in 1 hour, the size you want depending on how close they are. If each is between 4 and 6 meters in length, you get about 150 meters per hour of work. How many tree cutters do you have, Wormbrain? Wyatt looked at his datapad, replying, 34 Jincho. Jincho looked up, then said, so 10 teams, they take it in turns to cut trees, then move to pile for collection. 10 teams means 1.5 kilometers per hour. You only need 17 hours to cut, but allow more to sharpen tools, injuries, repairs, allow 5 days, but you must transport to Newtown, yes? Leopold called out, cargo nets! Lay big cargo nets on the ground and line up the logs on top of them. Then the shuttles can lift them with no problem. Say 1 net each hour, maybe every couple of hours. I'm not sure how much wood weighs. Jincho said, up to about 900 kilos per cubic meter, but burned will weigh a bit less, say 750. How much can Drazan shuttles carry? Wyatt absent-mindedly said, roughly 100 tons, but I would not want to carry that much in a net, even a heavy-duty one. Let's say 30 tons maximum. 15 would be safer. Jincho interrupted again, saying, 2 hours, 3,000 meters of cut branches. If everyone is working near each other, that is how much per trip. But it will be longer. No human works at the same speed all day. Start slow in the morning, then speed up, then slow again later. If humans all worked at full speed all day, then 2 days would be enough. But Jincho knows all humans do not, so 5 days. This is an easy bit. Jincho fell silent for a while, and Marcus said, I know burnt wood is harder to cut. I had to organize the demolition of a burned-out building once. It took longer than I expected because the contractors kept having to resharpen their saw blades. Jincho looked across the table at Marcus. Smart Ondlegox is true. This is what takes time. Make flat bits of wood. Laser takes 5 seconds each side. Takes... Jincho paused only for a moment. 60 days, but only have 25 days left, so must have at least 3 production lines. Each process must take no more than 5 seconds. Must be like sawmill, but smaller. He took his datapad from a pocket and started to make notes with one hand while feeding himself with the other. From the far end of the table, Lily called out, sir? Ah, Wyatt. You are going to need to protect the people cutting the trees. Wyatt nodded in agreement, adding, and coordination with the transports for both pickup of the tree limbs and drop-off and pickup of the forestry workers and troops. Tevish said, you can make simple gauges to give to those cutting the tree. They will show the maximum and minimum branch sizes. That way they only need to cut branches within the size range and trim off any too big or too small bits, allowing better use of the transports. Finally, Jincho put down his datapad and looked up, saying, in the data library, there are designs for many machines and production facilities. One was a design that placed a circular panel of hard, sweet material in the center of a random-sized, irregular shape on something humans called a biscuit. I can use this design to instead place the laser mark in the correct position. If the laser mark on top is in the proper location, then a laser mark on the bottom can be applied at same time. The parts are cheap, the design is simple, and it's quick to put together. We'll send Tevish designs, not take long to make. You need warehouse, somewhere dry, but can be done. Further down the table, Rachel asked Elizabeth, so you never said what you thought of Wyatt's attack on the Gallant Venture. Elizabeth looked across at Rachel and said, no, I didn't. I guess because it doesn't surprise me, it seems to me that Wyatt can be absolutely ruthless when he has to be, yet from what I have seen of him, he is far more likely to help someone than hurt them. He is a contradiction. Look at Declan, she said quietly, nodding towards the young man sitting next to Rachel. He was on the Gallant Venture, but he did not attack Wyatt, and rather than take advantage of the situation he found Declan in, he actually saved his life. He is very confusing. Just when you think you have him all figured out, he says or does something, and you go right back to being totally confused again. Rachel turned to Declan, asking him, so why did you swear loyalty to Wyatt, Declan? He was attacking your ship, actually captured your ship, yet you swore to serve him. I'm curious what caused you to do that, and what you think of Wyatt. Declan turned to Rachel, saying, my Lord Wyatt did not just spare my life, he put himself at risk, using the medical supplies intended to keep himself alive to save me. Then he instructed my men to take me to a medical pod and stay with me, but he did not disarm them, only telling them to surrender to the Royal Marines when they arrived. My father raised all of his children to understand what true nobility is, what honor and duty mean. Wyatt may not realize it, but without being aware of it, his actions mark him above many nobles. He saved my life, and I will serve him as best I can. I can show no higher honor. Rachel sat back and thought about this as the dinner continued. As Princess Clara sat quietly to Wyatt's right, listening to the conversation going on around her, she considered Wyatt's actions. Her friend might tell everyone to address him as Wyatt rather than by his rank, but he was clearly a natural leader. His methods were unorthodox. Many nobles would consider them scandalous, perhaps even outrageous, but they seemed to work. Being a natural leader, that was not particularly unusual. There were plenty of good leaders out in the principality. What was rare was his concern for everyone around him. She was distracted from her thoughts when the Ikanti counselor, Arinko, turned to Wyatt and said, "Excuse me, Wyatt, but what do you require of us other than our artistic skills?" Wyatt looked up. He had been trying to decide if he should help himself to more of the main courses or wait for desserts. He replied, "I don't want anything from you." Then he stopped and reconsidered, saying, "I'd like everyone, Yakanti and human, to make Newtown a good place to live, for everyone. I'm not asking anyone to serve. I'm asking for you all to cooperate with each other. I believe that the business is structured as a cooperative. We should take that as an example. I want people here to be safe and to have a good life. It doesn't matter where they come from. They are here now, or at least they will be tomorrow. I want everyone in Newtown to not have to worry about their day-to-day lives. I want them to be taken care of. But I think I want you all to set an example for Heigo to follow. I'm going to ensure every man, woman, and child has some credits to spend. I'd like you, where possible, to spend them on Heigo. Set a great example and prove to any visitors that there is nothing to fear here. That said, I fully expect the Auxilia to keep up with their training. There are still Drazan about, and other creatures, plus there might still be pirates or others who would bring violence to the town. Also, I was thinking, in addition to the med pod already here, there are more on the Eternal Garden, currently being used to heal the most injured of General Swallowtail's people. Plus, we have a number of medics, nurses, and vets helping him. I want to make sure we keep back homes in all areas of the town to give them a choice of where to live when they eventually return. Aino, looking at him, nodded his understanding. As Wyatt continued, House Ferentis has promised to rebuild the rail line from here to the spaceport. I believe it will take somewhere between 8 months and a year to do this. Once the line is built, it will be easier to travel, but we can also expect visitors to come here. So far, I have not seen much of Heigo, but wherever I have gone, I've seen evidence of people with old injuries, most recently with the young woman I bought to help us understand how to process the biodiesel. I think we can help with people like that. Sat out on the beach this afternoon, I was thinking it's a nice spot. What if we built a small hospital there? Somewhere that could help with long-term injuries. It might only be needed for a few years, and we can always turn the structure to other uses later. But from what I've been told, the Ikanti create open shells for their buildings where the interior can be adapted as needed. Such a structure can serve as a hospital to start with. But maybe later it can be a sports center, beach club, gallery, or even a hotel for visiting nobles, should any want to visit our beach. This last comment caused almost everyone around the table to laugh. And at this moment, James returned, the increased levels of conversation indicating that most had finished the main part of their meal, announcing that the desserts were about to be served. When the desserts arrived, it was clear the bakery had been involved as well, with a selection of small pastries, a warm fruit tart, and ice cream, which everyone added to their plates with gusto. For the next 10 minutes, no one spoke, enjoying the different flavors presented to them. As people started to finish their dessert, Wyatt made his excuses and went to the toilet. On his way back, he looked in on the small kitchen and said, "James, could you and your helpers come out to the terrace, please?" Then went back to his seat outside. It took the kitchen staff a couple of minutes to look presentable, then they all came to the door. When Wyatt saw them appear, he stood and announced, "Your Royal Highness, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, and honored Yakanti, I believe I can honestly say that this has been a highly enjoyable meal, in no small part thanks to James Sicklehorn and his staff." Picking up his glass of cordial, Wyatt said, "I propose a toast to James and his staff. With that, everyone stood, including Princess Clara, and raised their glasses to the small group of kitchen staff, standing in the doorway saying to James and his staff. James, clearly embarrassed by the praise, mumbled, "Thank you so much, but we would have presented you with a much poorer selection were it not for Sir Declan and his staff." The glasses were raised a second time with everyone saying, "To Sir Declan and his staff!" Wyatt and everyone else started to sit and then realized that the princess was still standing. Clara turned to the chef saying, "Master Sicklehorn, I wonder if we can impose on you one more time." James bowed and said, "Of course, Your Royal Highness. You have only to ask." Clara motioned for everyone else to sit and then said, "We have on our ship a number of children. They come from the worst kind of families, but they were on board during the battle with the Drazen and saved many lives. I feel some reward is due to them, so could I possibly ask you to open your restaurant to them tomorrow? A grand meal is not required, but some of your fine ice cream and simple fish and chips or burger and chips, whilst they experience the beach, would I think give them a nice reward and the chance to just be children for a day?" James looked at his staff, who all nodded to him, then he turned and replied, "Your Royal Highness, it will be our pleasure." Clara smiled, saying, "I'm not sure that pleasure is the word I would use, but thank you once again, Master Sicklehorn." Turning to face Sergeant Major Michael Starrant, she said, "Sergeant Major, we will need a handful of your people to keep an eye on the children. I don't think any will try to run away, but—" He turned to Clara and just said, "Of course, ma'am." As Clara sat back down, Marcus asked, "Do any of these children swim?" Clara looked at Wyatt and Cynthia, both of whom shrugged before she replied, "I have no idea, though I doubt it." Marcus nodded, then said, "Well, it's just as well the swimming pool should be ready tomorrow, then. I'll do some swimming lessons for any child who wants to learn. No point in letting them drown." Wyatt said, "I'm sure that will be appreciated. Thank you, Marcus." They all stayed sitting at the table, chatting as if they had been friends for years, until finally Clara stood, looking at everyone gathered there. She said, "Thank you all for indulging my little day off from being a princess, but now I fear it is time for me to return to the Noir Navio." Looking at Wyatt, she asked, "Are you fit to fly, or should I ask one of the other composters?" Wyatt, who had drunk very little alcohol during the day, replied, "I'm fine, Clara, good to go," and started to follow her. Then Clara paused for a moment, and Cynthia looked at Declan and said, "Sir Declan, your actions today have done you credit. I suggest you clear up here and join the composters when they return to the ship. I expect you to join us tomorrow for training." If Declan was surprised to be complimented, he did not show it. But when Cynthia informed him that he was to take part in the training sessions with the composters, his jaw dropped open. It was still hanging open as Clara, Cynthia, and Wyatt left, causing Nultar to come other and gently push it closed, while Leopold just quietly sniggered, saying, "Looks like you are joining in the training sessions now, Declan." Once Declan had re-engaged his brain, everyone helped to bring in the beach equipment, placing it in a store within the harbor wall. Then they took the huge table and the nice chairs that went with it and carried them into the living room of one of the 3 large houses that stood on the beach road. With that done and leaving Marcus snoozing by the pool waiting for the builders, the rest of the group walked back up the hill. As they were bringing in the beach equipment, Wyatt was taking his shuttle back towards the Noir Navio. Clara and Cynthia joined him in the cockpit with Milcades and the Royal Marines in the rear of the shuttle. Once on board and alone, Wyatt turned to Clara and asked, "What was all that about, Clara?" Clara smiled. "Cannot a princess have a day off?" she asked. Then she added, "It was good to get off the Noir Navio. I can't really do much there, and I am just getting in people's way. Besides, I really wanted to see your barony. But I also wanted to see how you are doing with the people. I have to say I am surprised. For someone who hates being a lord, your actions are remarkably lord-like." Wyatt was surprised, saying, "I am not. No lord I've ever seen would ever thank people just for doing a good job." Clara turned towards him, saying, "I am sure some would. Sir Declan, for example, seems like a very polite young man. But I understand what you mean. Many nobles are too self-important, you Wyatt. Well, you are not afraid of hard work. I'm told you have been out with people exploring buildings and shooting Drazen. Oh, and encountering huge deer like creatures in the mist." Wyatt smiled at the last comment. "The deer was special. I never felt threatened in the least by it, even though it was a huge creature. Then he turned serious. I just thought that if I was supposed to be running a barony, that I should know what it was I was in charge of. Besides, the people are all good people. They have been working really hard. Even just the simple things, like trimming the lawns. They are making a huge effort. Clara looked at her friend. Wyatt, they are making a huge effort because you asked them to, perhaps more importantly, because you showed them some respect. You thanked them for the work they had done. You apologized for getting them to do stuff they did not expect to have to do. That's what a lord is supposed to do. How they are supposed to behave. Sadly, all too few of them do so. Most sit around on their fat backsides while their servants deal with their every need, fawning over them. Clara paused briefly, then said, I'm told you turn up, ask questions, thank them for their work, and then leave. People don't mind answering questions if they can see you are genuinely interested in what they have to say. Wyatt looked at Clara and said, I never wanted to be a lord, but if I must be one, then I want to understand what I need to do. I want to be someone that the people under me can trust. I will not just leave everything to other people, and if I am going to run the barony of the Screaming Forests, then I want to be the person I'd like to have in charge, not someone who doesn't care or someone who just looks at the profit, but someone who can make it a decent place for children to grow up in, where there might be monsters to be scared about, but where there are also decent people standing by to protect them. Oh, and speaking of children, what's with sending the pirate children to the beach tomorrow? Clara let out a short, ha, then said, Those children did well. Very well, even. They fought fires in places adults could not get to, and saved several people's lives and even more people from injury. They deserve some sort of reward. I cannot send them off like the mercenaries to get drunk, though I am sure some of the older ones probably would do. But that beach is as safe a space as I can find. They can have fun, play games, maybe learn to swim and enjoy the food, especially the ice cream. What was that made of? Without thinking, Wyatt replied, Deer milk makes for a very rich flavor and an interesting texture. Clara continued, In the end, Wyatt, they are still children. Even you would have to admit they did well in the battle. Wyatt sighed. Clara was right, and he knew it. Okay, fine. Give them their day out, but send Reed down with them as well. Their actions are at least in part down to his leadership. He cares what happens to them. Let him see them having fun, but don't tell anyone I said that. It will spoil my reputation. With that, the two ladies started laughing, and they kept laughing as Wyatt gently brought the shuttle into the Nornavio, set it down, and shut down the engines. As Clara and Cynthia went to their quarters, Wyatt smiled. Approaching one of the technicians, he asked them to run a full check on the shuttle before the next morning, then he too went off to get some sleep. When Clara entered her quarters, she was not surprised to find an incoming call from Redford Kalen. Did you have an interesting trip, Clara? Was it worth it? He asked. Clara considered everything that had happened and said, Yes, Uncle, it was a good day. And as she carefully removed Elizabeth's sketches from a box and started to place them on a wall, she added, I think you could say it was definitely worth it.